some of the reasons why or why not you'd want to move to Maryland, just in case you're deciding or thinking about moving here. Hi, welcome to Living in Maryland with Montague Properties. And if you haven't been to our channel yet, this is your first time, please feel free to like our videos, subscribe to our videos, and even hit that bell button so we can make sure that you are notified every single time we post a new video. So today, let's talk about some of the reasons why or why not you'd want to move to Maryland, just in case you're deciding or thinking about moving here. So let's start with number one, the weather. The weather is pros and cons. The weather is very interesting here. Yes, we have all 4 seasons, so it is delightful in the spring and also in the fall. Summer isn't that bad. Probably, sometimes it gets to the 90s. Every once in a while, we'll get to the hundreds. But the con for the summertime for us is the humidity. It can get very, very humid here with relative humidity of 80-90%. And that is the thing that gets most people with the weather here. Now, let's talk about snow. We haven't talked about winter yet. Sometimes we get snow, sometimes we don't get snow. It really depends on where you live in the state of Maryland, how much snow you may or may not get. So if you live in, say, the southern part of Maryland, it's highly unlikely you're gonna get a lot of snow. But if you live in northern and western Maryland, it's nearer the mountains, so it's more likely you are going to get snow throughout the winter. So it kind of depends if you like snow or not like snow, where you want to live. Now, I will tell you, about every 10 years, we get a good old whammy of a snowstorm and we get a couple feet, but for the most part, it will snow here just a few inches, and usually by the next day it's gone because it's 40 or 50 degrees outside. Summertime, like I said, is hot, and spring and fall are very delightful. And because we have all 4 seasons, you do get to see the beautiful changes of the leaves come the fall. You take a nice drive out to Skyline Drive, which is actually in Virginia, but look at the beautiful leaves that change during that time of year. Also, what's interesting about our weather here in Maryland is we always say it's a little bipolar, because it is not unusual to have a day that is 30 degrees and the next day it'd be 70. Happens all of the time. We see it happen especially when it's weather changing, such as spring and fall, but it does happen where one day, like I said, it's snowing and the next day it's 40 or 50 degrees outside. So the weather is either a pro or con for you if you're looking to live in Maryland, but if you're looking for a place that has all 4 seasons, that you can actually go to places where it will snow and places it won't, this is definitely the place to be. All right, so the next pro for Maryland would be the opportunities for jobs. Where we're located, so close to Washington, D.C., the job opportunities are plentiful here. Yes, most people do travel to Northern Virginia or to Washington, D.C. for these job opportunities, yet at the same time, because of all of the government agencies we have, it is plentiful. We've got government jobs, contracting jobs, military jobs on many military bases that are around, which include Fort Belvoir, Andrews Air Force Base, the Pentagon. We also have Patuxent Naval Station and Fort Meade. Those are just some of the places that you work that are military or military oriented. And the Pentagon is not military. There's just a lot of military in the Pentagon as in job opportunities. And then not to mention all of the other type of special forces we have, FBI, Secret Service, all of the jobs like that are plentiful here in the Maryland region. And like I said before, a lot of those folks that work in those departments and those areas also live in Maryland, because the cost of living in Maryland is more affordable for them versus Northern Virginia or Washington, D.C. But again, back to the opportunity of jobs, it is a lot of opportunity here. And matter of fact, when we saw a lot of areas have difficulty with job opportunities, we did not feel as much of that here in Maryland because we live so close to Washington, D.C. Another pro for Maryland is that, a lot of Maryland has a lot of rural areas around. And what's interesting about that is we are surrounded by 2 cities. So we got Washington, D.C., and then we got Baltimore. And what's really interesting and cool about that is you can go from being on the water of the Chesapeake Bay fishing to being in the city and exploring and eating, diverse foods in different places and seeing the Washington National Zoo and stuff like that. So, or even the Baltimore Zoo. So it's interesting because you really kind of get the best of both worlds, the rural areas and the city life. And all of it usually is within a very short distance to drive in order to get there. And so if you're a city slicker, but you also like the country, you can get the best of both worlds here, because the eastern shore also of Maryland is kind of like a sleepy area filled with lots of very expensive homes on the water, but it's really, I don't want to say far out there, but it's out there across the Bay Bridge, and it is just more rural and quaint and quiet. Well, once you get closer in, you get to the city, it is robust. So in the state of Maryland, another pro would be that you can really do a lot of different sporting activities in Maryland, because you can go from a place in Western Maryland called Deep Creek Lake. You can go from the lake, from water skiing and all of that, to hiking and then snow skiing in the wintertime in the Deep Creek Lake area. Then you can go out to the eastern shore of Maryland and you can go out fishing, doing any sort of motorboat type of activity, kayaking, canoeing, parasailing, anything along those lines. And then we also have multiple rivers in the state of Maryland, and you also can fish and boat and do any sort of boating activity on the rivers as well. And then we also have many places and state parks that you can go hiking, all of those fun activities along. If you like to be a hunter, we have places to hunt, and you can hunt all sorts of things from deer to waterfowl, just depending on the season and depending what your interests are. So sporting is definitely something that you can do in the state of Maryland, and you can go from snow skiing to water skiing and everything in between. Another pro for the state of Maryland is that within a very short drive, we have multiple airports. Now, Maryland has one major airport. The one major airport that we have is Baltimore Washington International Airport. It is an international airport. You can fly directly out of it. It is an international airport, which means that you are able to go to other international places relatively easy and usually with very direct flights. But also within the state of Maryland, we're very close to DCA, which is Reagan National Airport, and also Dulles Airport in Virginia. So a short drive, you have 3 major airports that you can get to. So if you're coming here for business, you can get to Washington, DC relatively easy, or Baltimore Airport to get to New York City, to California, and even overseas. Very easy if you are looking for a place that has accessibility and you have to drive very far to be able to fly out of town. All right, so let's talk about some cons for the state of Maryland. So major con here is traffic. If you don't like traffic, this is not a place for you to be. So Maryland is the 8th smallest state and is the 18th most populated state in the country. Now, part of that's because we are, again, really close to Washington, D.C. So that means that people want to work in the city and they live in the country out here in Maryland. So what ends up happening is it's more populated, we get more and more people here, and so traffic can be unbearable. The Capital Beltway, which goes around Washington, D.C. to Northern Virginia and through Maryland, which is designed, to get people around quickly, during rush hour is not very fast, and oftentimes the arteries around the major places in Maryland are, very packed full of cars. But you do get to some places where there isn't very much traffic, but you have to be aware of that. Now, do we have public transportation? Yes, in some areas, public transportation is there. Would I say it's plentiful? Probably not. We do have the metro in some parts of Montgomery County, some parts of Prince George's County, and then there are buses to go with that. But most of Maryland is a car state. So therefore, because it's a car state, meaning that you have to drive your car to get places, you're gonna have more traffic. Even on the weekends, sometimes traffic can be unbearable. But for the most part, rush hour is pretty crazy. And rush hour, I think, goes from about 6 a.m. in the morning to about 8 a.m. And in the afternoon, sometimes the Beltway will be started to be clogged up even as early as 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So traffic can be definitely a con for the state of Maryland. All right, so another con for the state of Maryland is it's very expensive to live here. So the cost of living here is about 8.4% higher than other places in the United States. Yet our average median income is $95,000 as of 2021. So you look at that and you say, okay, well, it's more expensive to live, but you're making more money. Well, let's talk about what the housing looks like and the average cost of a house here in the state of Maryland. So across the board, the average median sales price for a home is $352,000. So that's not as much when you compare it to the $95,000 in income. But let's understand that that doesn't equal everywhere across the board. So Maryland is really spread out. Like I said, you've got your rural areas, you've got your non-rural areas. When you get into the areas that's non-rural and it's very dense, you're talking Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Howard County. Average cost of a house there is $700,000. But when you get further out, say Southern Maryland, and well, not all houses in Southern Maryland, but parts of Southern Maryland, you can get a really decent house for $300,000 or $350,000. So if you go further north or out from the areas, it's going to be the same. So although our cost of living is higher and the income that we make is higher, housing is not the same across the board. And Maryland is one of the states that has ranked one of the most millionaires, meaning people who are millionaires in the United States by how much they have in assets. So it's one of the states that have the most millionaires. Interesting fact. All right, so let's talk about another con for the state of Maryland. So it would be bugs and critters. If you don't like bugs and you don't like critters, this may not be the place for you, or it might be the place for you if you like them. So mosquitoes. So from spring until fall, we have mosquitoes. They are everywhere. We have tons of water, like I said. Mosquitoes, they like to bite people. So we often are bit by mosquitoes. Lots of citronella in our areas. People use the candles, we use sprays. Just be prepared if you're moving to Maryland that there's mosquitoes. Number two, I think in this category would be, let's talk a little bit about the poisonous things that we have. So we do have things like black snakes. They're not poisonous, but we do, because of so much water, we have copperhead snakes, and they can be poisonous. They are poisonous. You do not want to get bitten by one. We also have black widow spiders and the brown recluse spider. Those can bite you, and I've known many people who've been bitten by them, and they are all poisonous critters. It is not something that we see happen all the time, but they are here, and it is something that we need and should be aware of. So here's an interesting fact about snakes. So we do have a snake here called a black snake. It's a friendly snake. They grow really long. They can be 6 feet long. If you have a black snake, that's a good thing, because the black snake kills the poisonous copperheads. Well, there was a house in Annapolis, and you can go ahead and look it up, and it was called the Snake House. And apparently the house was infested with snakes, and these people bought it and they didn't know it was infested with snakes. It's a true story. Go check it out, but don't be afraid of Maryland because of that. The interesting thing is it actually happened, and there was a big lawsuit around it. So go do your own investigating about it. It's not something that happens here. It's the first time I've ever heard of it, but it was just an interesting fact I wanted to share with you. So one last con for you for the state of Maryland are taxes. So there's only 2 states higher. New York and California have higher taxes than the state of Maryland, yet Maryland has very high taxes. There are certain counties that have higher taxes than others in the state of Maryland. Maryland always refers to itself as different counties, and each county has their own rate depending on where you are. So taxes are much higher in the state of Maryland, and we have, for our state tax, it's a 6% sales tax on all the items that you purchase, except for obviously food. So it is a little bit higher there. It's just something to consider. Again, that goes back to getting paid more money. We have more taxes, is what it is, right? Across the board. So that's just how it works sometimes. So another con would be taxes for the state of Maryland and property taxes. All right. So until next time, please like my video, please subscribe, and please hit the bell button, to be alerted for the next video that's going to be posted for you to view. Hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you soon.